angels, it's Hailey Reese and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am so grateful that you are here and I do hope that you are having an absolutely beautiful morning, afternoon, or night, whatever it is for you when this video finally reaches you. Today we are diving into yet another video in regards to black-eyed children. Recently, there's been an increase in requests for black-eyed children experiences, but one question I've been getting a lot more lately than ever before is whether or not experiences with black-eyed children are exclusive to rural homes. Now, I had first done a video explaining everything to do with black-eyed children when I had first started my channel back in 2017. And when I had first talked about it, one of the things that I'd mentioned is that black-eyed children do tend to frequent rural or less populated areas. However, it's certainly not exclusive to showing up at your front door. Many of people have experiences on country back roads, in empty parking lots, and just in deserted areas late at night in general. So today, we are going to dive into 3 black-eyed children encounters, and 2 of them are unlike your typical home visits. So with all of that being said, I do hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. Sit back, relax, maybe turn a light on. Because if you've been here for a while, you know that when it comes to black-eyed children, no pun intended, things get dark. It begins. I never thought I'd be posting something like this, but I'm seriously at a loss for what else to call it. I'm a rational person, and I try not to jump to conclusions, but whatever happened to me last night, well, it was unsettling, to say the least. So a bit of background. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Not much ever happens around here, and I like it that way. I've been living in the same house for a few years now, and I've never had any issues with strange occurrences or anything remotely paranormal. That's when I heard about the so-called black-eyed children that come around here online. I wrote it off as just another creepy urban legend. But what happened last night? Well, I can't explain it. It was around 9:30 p.m. when I heard a knock at the door. I had just gotten comfortable on the couch watching a movie and I wasn't expecting anyone. I figured it was just a neighbor asking to borrow something or a delivery, so I wasn't too concerned. But when I looked through the peephole, my heart nearly stopped. Standing on my doorstep were 2 kids, maybe 10 or 11 years old. They looked normal at a first glance, but there was something very off. They were wearing plain clothes, nothing fancy, just casual shirts and jeans. But what made my stomach churn was their eyes. They were completely black. No whites, no iris, just pitch black, like 2 voids staring at me. I froze. I mean, who wouldn't? I've read the stories, heard the rumors, but I never imagined it would happen to me. I tried to convince myself it was just some trick of the light or a weird reflection, but no, their eyes were definitely black. The girl spoke first. Her voice was soft, almost monotone. She said, "Can we come in?" I hesitated. I was trying to make sense of what I was seeing, but my gut told me something wasn't right. I didn't want to be rude, but I wasn't about to open the door. That's just common sense, right? So I asked, "Where are your parents?" The boy didn't respond right away. He just stood there, staring at me with those black eyes. And then the girl repeated, "Let us in." At that point, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. It was like my instincts were screaming at me to stay away, but I couldn't move. It wasn't until the boy spoke again that I snapped out of it. His voice was lower, almost urgent. "We need to come inside. Let us in." I could feel my heart pounding. There was no way I was going to let these kids in. I stepped back from the door, trying to act calm, and I said as firmly as I could, "No, I'm not opening the door." The silence on the other side of the door lasted for what felt like an eternity. And then, without another word, I heard them walk away. I waited at the door for a few more minutes, not daring to look outside, too afraid of what I might see. I don't know why I didn't just call the police. I guess I was in shock, too confused by what had just happened. It wasn't until an hour later I felt brave enough to check the front yard and security cameras. But when I did, there was no sign of the kids on either. Not a trace. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. I stayed up the rest of the night, locking all the doors and windows, convinced I'd see them again. I kept thinking about those eyes, those black, empty eyes that seemed to be staring straight through me. The worst part, I can't shake the feeling that they're still out there, watching. Every time I walk past the windows or hear a sound at night, I feel like they're just waiting for me to let my guard down. What they are, I don't know. I mean, I didn't know before and certainly didn't believe, but after experiencing them, well, now I really don't know. And I really don't know what to make of it. But I can't shake the feeling that whatever happened last night wasn't normal. I'm really trying not to go overboard, but I can't stop thinking about it. I just hope they don't come back. And that's the end of that experience. I always find it so crazy when reading these experiences because I can't even fathom the debate that would go on within your mind as far as opening the door or not. I mean, when there's two vulnerable looking children standing on your front porch in a rural or quiet neighborhood, you may feel inclined to let them in or at least help them. But when you're staring at their blacked out eyes, especially if you have knowledge of black-eyed children, well, then what do you decide to do? I've said this a million times before, but demons require permission for entry. And while nobody really knows up until this day as far as what black-eyed children actually are, it's never left my mind that they always need permission to enter, and that things take a dark and terrifying turn for those that do. So creepy. This next experience takes place in the car. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, black-eyed children experiences are not exclusive to home visits. Plenty of people have experienced black-eyed children wanting to climb in their car while driving late at night. And today's experience is no exception. I'm shocked that I'm here writing this, but I have no one else to talk to about it. This happened a few nights ago, and I have no idea what to think. To say it's drove me crazy would be an understatement. I'm a pretty level-headed person, nothing superstitious or paranormal for me. But what I experienced on a back road makes me start to question everything. It was late, around 11:30 p.m., and I was driving home from a friend's place. I live in a rural area, so my drive usually takes me down some long, empty back roads. I'm used to the quiet, the darkness, and even the occasional deer darting across the road. But this time, something was different. The road I was on was one of those that's barely lit, with dense trees on either side. It's the kind of place where you get the sense you're far from civilization and there's no cell service, which always makes me uneasy. But like I said, I'm used to it. I had my windows down a bit, just enjoying the night air, when I saw something in my headlights up ahead. At first, I thought it was a person walking down the road, which didn't seem too out of the ordinary. But as I got closer, I realized something wasn't right. There were two kids, both of them standing in the middle of the road, almost like they were waiting for me. It didn't make sense. It's a quiet, desolate stretch of road. I couldn't imagine who would be here at this time, let alone two kids. I slowed down getting closer, but they didn't move at all. The first thing that struck me was how still they were, just standing there, directly at my headlights. As I got closer, I noticed their eyes. I don't know how to explain it, but they were completely black. No whites, no pupils, just solid black. It wasn't like the typical spooky black eyes I'd seen in horror movies or had heard about online. It was like there was no soul behind them, just an empty void, the kind of feeling that makes your stomach drop or sick. I'm not gonna lie, I almost drove right past them, but something in my gut told me to stop. Maybe it was the way they were standing so eerily still, or maybe it was that primal feeling of danger you get when something is horribly wrong. I stopped my car about 10 feet away, and for a moment, neither of them moved or said anything. The girl, who looked to be maybe 10 or 11, was the first to speak, like reciting something from memory. "Can you help us? We're lost," she said, her eyes locked on mine. I didn't respond at first. I just stared at them, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The boy, who couldn't have been older than 7 or 8, spoke next, his voice even more detached. "We need to come inside, please." I'm not even sure what I was thinking at that point, but the overwhelming feeling of dread hit me like a ton of bricks. I had no idea where these kids had come from or how they'd ended up on this road, but I sure as hell wasn't about to let them in my car. My first instinct was to drive away, but I was frozen. I finally said, "Where are your parents?" The girl didn't flinch. She just stared, her black eyes unblinking. "We don't have parents." "Can we come in?" she repeated, her voice growing more insistent, more unnatural. The boy was still silent, just standing there with that same unsettling gaze. That's when I panicked. I hit the gas without thinking, barely missing them as I sped away. I looked in my rearview mirror, and I swear they were still standing there, watching me drive off into the dark. I kept my foot on the gas all the way home. I didn't stop to take a breath until I was back in my driveway. But even then, I still felt that gnawing sense of something being wrong. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I'd just seen a couple kids in the middle of nowhere. Maybe they were lost. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. The way they looked at me, those eyes, felt wrong. Like they weren't even human. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the whole thing in my head. I kept thinking about their eyes. I kept wondering if they're still out there, waiting for someone else to stop. Has anyone ever had something like this happen? I don't know what I saw that night, but I can't shake the feeling that whatever it wasn't just some lost kids. It really did feel like something much darker. And that's the end of that experience. Again, I feel like despite all of the warning signs and the red flags, the blacked out eyes, the no blinking, the flat voice that sounded, I think they said, almost not human-like, or at least becoming far more sinister by the moment, I'd be wondering, did I just leave 2 lost kids out on the back roads? But they said they don't even have parents. That is so creepy. There's nothing worse than being alone on a back, dimly lit road in the middle of the night and just feeling like you're driving through a horror movie set. But what do you guys think of that one? Make sure to let me know down below. And this is the final one. I'm a high school teacher, and sometimes I have to stay late at the school to catch up on grading or planning lessons. It's no big deal for me, and I usually enjoy the quiet. The building is old, and once everyone leaves, it gets pretty eerie. The hallway echoes when you walk through them, and the fluorescent lights above flicker every so often. But again, it's nothing I haven't gotten used to over the years. This evening, I stayed late finishing up a stack of papers for my history class. It was already 9:30 p.m. when I heard what I thought was a knock at my classroom door. At first, I assumed it was one of the janitors, or maybe a student who'd forgot something. But when I looked through the small window in the door, I saw 2 kids standing outside. I wasn't expecting any students, and these were certainly not high school students, so I found it odd. But what struck me immediately was how they were standing, like frozen in space and not moving at all. And that was strange because at this hour, the building was also just totally empty. I hadn't seen anyone when I was walking to my classroom earlier. I opened the door, keeping a little distance between myself and them. The boy looked to be about 10, and the girl was maybe even a little younger, at like 7 or 8. They were dressed in what looked like normal clothes, nothing out of the ordinary, except for the fact they were both barefoot. It was late October, and the floors of the school were cold, so that stood out to me right away. "Can we come in?" the boy asked. I didn't know what to say at first. I mean, it was late, and I didn't know they were there. "Where are your parents?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. The girl who hadn't said anything up until then spoke up in a flat voice. "We're cold." She didn't sound upset. She didn't sound like a kid either. It was more like she was reading from a script. My stomach tightened. There was something off about the way they were standing. Their eyes were dark, completely black, no white at all. I thought maybe it was bad lighting, but as I looked closer, I realized it actually wasn't. Their eyes were solid black. The kind of stare that made me feel like I was being watched by something definitely not human. I didn't let them in. I stood there trying to come up with a reason, but all I could think was that it was so late and the kids were far from home. "I'm sorry, you shouldn't be here. It's late and the building is locked down for the night," I said, my voice a little shaky but trying to sound firm. The boy didn't move or respond right away. He just stared at me with those black eyes, like he was waiting for me to say something more. The girl looked at her feet, her hands hanging by her side. It felt like they were waiting for something. I don't know why, but I had this sudden feeling that if I let them in, something bad would happen. So I stepped back, closed the door, and said, "You need to go now. You're not supposed to be here." And that's when they finally moved. The boy turned around and started walking down the hallway, his steps completely silent. The girl followed without a word. I could still see them through the small window in the door walking away. It wasn't until they turned the corner that I stopped holding my breath. I quickly locked the door and double-checked the windows, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong with them. The whole situation felt weird, like I'd avoided something I was never meant to understand. I didn't even finish grading that night. I packed up and left as quick as I could, glancing over my shoulder the entire time. When I got home, I Googled black-eyed children out of curiosity, and I really wish I hadn't. It was like every story I read about them mirrored what I had just experienced, hence me now sharing mine. I'm still not sure if maybe I was just tired or overreacting, but the more I think about it, the more I'm convinced that it wasn't just some kids in the school or a weird situation. Has anyone had an experience like this at their school? I really feel like I'm losing my mind, but I don't know what else it could have been if not black-eyed children. I've been paranoid ever since, especially when alone in my classroom after hours. Could you imagine the fear of being in an empty school at night, especially an old one like they described, after having this experience and having to rush out back to your car? Terrifying. I've told you guys so many times that nothing quite freaks me out like the black-eyed children, so I would love to know, what did you guys think of these 3 experiences? Make sure to comment them down below. Have you ever experienced the black-eyed children? And if so, what did you do? And if not, what would you do? Make sure to comment all of that down below, and that is it for today's video. If you guys are new to my channel or you are just not yet subscribed but you enjoy my content, I would absolutely love it if you go ahead and click that subscribe button, and please give this video a big thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness, and until tomorrow, I love you. Bye, guys.